Okay, so in this video, we're going to have a look at counting and we're going to have a look at totaling. So what does Cambridge want you to be able to do for this section of the course? Well, Cambridge says they want you to understand and use the concepts of totaling and counting. Now, we've used totaling and counting before in other programs, so it shouldn't be something that you've never seen before, but we're going to look at it more closely and kind of see how it works properly in this video. So if we think about what counting is, and we all know what counting is. It's just counting 1, 2, 3, 4. Yeah, or if you want to do an increment, you could say 2, 4, 6, 8, or 3, 6, 9, 12, and so on. Because we've learned how to count and we learned our times tables when we were younger. But computers don't find it as easy as this, because what a computer needs to know is what are they adding this value to. So when I say add 1, they need to say, well, they need to know what they're adding that 1 value to. So we do this by setting a value. So we create a variable and we set a value of the value that we want to set it to. Now, just at this point, I just want to draw your attention to say that it doesn't have to be called value and the value doesn't have to be 0. This is just an example. Okay, then we can say value. Oh, I'll spell that wrong. Value is equal to value plus 1. So we're saying, okay, create this variable called value, and we want to make it equal to what value already is plus an extra 1. So that means if value is 0, it's basically saying 0 plus 1. Okay, so it's saying value is equal to 0 plus 1, which will then give it value is now equal to 1. All right, so it's a bit long-winded the way a computer does it, but it needs to do that because it needs to load up the value that we have or the value that we want to add to, and then it can add it to it. Okay, that's what it needs to do. So let's have a look at this in Python. Okay, so I'm just going to load up the idle, and we'll just create a new file, and we'll save it as totaling and counting. Yes, I'll replace my new file. So I've got one that was already there. And then let's get to it. So first thing I'm going to do, I think I'm going to call it count. And I think I'll make it equal to 0. And then I'm just going to add a while loop. I'm going to say while count is, let's say, less than 10, do the following. Print count, and then say count is equal to count plus 1. Right, now if I run this, save it, you'll see it starts at 0 because the count started at 0, and it goes all the way down to 9. It doesn't get to 10 because my while loop said while it's below 10. Once it got to 10, the loop stopped. So if I wanted to count to 10, I'd have to make either that 11 or make it less than or equal to. Okay, one of those two things. Right, but for now, I'm not too bothered because we're just looking at how the count works. So this is basically how a count works. Okay, you can count in increments, or you could by using different types of loops. So you can count down, or you can start from a higher number, say from 20 to 30 or something like that. It all works the same way, just by using a variable and make it equal to what the variable is already called plus the amount you want to add to it. Okay, so let's have a look at an example. Okay, so if we see here, I've got, there you go, the heights of 500 students in a school are being measured. Write an algorithm, and we're not going to do it in pseudocode, we're going to do it in programming code, which inputs all 500 heights and outputs how many were taller than 4.5 and how many were shorter than 4.5. At 1.45, sorry. So notice that there's not going to be a account for anything that is exactly 4.5 in this program, okay? But not to worry, because we're just looking at counting for this. All right, so we're not looking at totaling for this one. We're just looking at, okay? So basically the things that we're going to be counting are how many are taller than 4.45 and how many are shorter than 4.45. Okay, so let's get into it. I just put this to one side and then stick my pipe and go to the other. I'll just delete this and just put a quick comment to what we are going to do. So the first thing we're going to do is we want to record okay, so that's going to be the first thing we do, and then we want to say if there are and 1.45 at the taller if they are shorter than 1.45, add 2. Okay, so for this one, because I know that there are 500 students, I'm going to use a for loop, all right, because I know. But I'm not going to use 500 because I don't want to add 500. I'm just going to add maybe 5, because if it works for 5, it will work for 500. Okay, so I can test it with 5 and then change it to 500 once I'm finished. So the first thing I need to do is set my variables up. So let's add a variable called shorter, and we'll make it equal to 0 because we haven't measured anyone yet. And then make a variable called taller. We make that equal to 0 because we haven't added anyone yet. And now we're going to open our loop. So for I, or let's call it student. For student in range, let's say 1 to 6. Do the following. So we're going to have a height. We're going to have it equal to a float input because it's 1.45, so we're going to be putting decimals in because these are probably meters, I'm guessing. And just say enter height in meters. And then I've opened 2 brackets, so I've closed 2 brackets. And now I'm going to say if height is, let's say, greater than, so if height's greater than 1.45 meters, then taller is equal to taller plus 1. Now I could say, I could use an elif here and say elif height is shorter than 1.45, but I'm just going to use an else. Now what this will actually do is say if it is 1.45, it will go on the shorter list, but for this purposes, I think it's okay. All right, we can do that because it doesn't actually tell us in this scenario over here, it doesn't actually tell us what it wants us to do with people that are actually specifically 1.45. So I'm just going to add it in the shorter one. Okay, so we can say shorter is equal to shorter plus 1. Okay, so what this is going to actually do, let me make my code window slightly bigger. What it's going to actually do is if a student inputs something in here that is higher than 1.45, it will use counting to add 1 to here. And if it is 1.45 or shorter, it will use counting to add 1 to there. And then finally, out of the loop, let's do a print statement just to say there are, let's see, there are taller, and then in speech marks, taller students. And then we'll do, you can copy this one and just there are shorter students. So let's run that and see what we get. Save it. And invalid syntax. Perhaps you forgot a comma. Where did I forget a comma? Ah. Didn't forget a comma though. Yes, I did. There are shorter. Don't know what happened there. Just get rid of that. Must have pressed the wrong button when I tried to run it. Shorter students. There you go. That should work now. Let's run it. Save it. And oh, what have I done there? You can set put an R on the end of range. That's why you should always look at the screen when you're typing. Let's run this again. All right, so enter in meters. I'm going to put 1.3 for the first one, so that should be shorter. So there's 1 for shorter. 1.2, there's 2 for shorter. 1.4, there's 3 for shorter, and then let's do 2 for over. 1.88. And maybe 1.9. Okay, so you can see there, 2 are taller and 3 are shorter. So it worked. Okay, now let's have a look at some totaling. So we could probably add some totaling in this. If we wanted to have let's say if we wanted to here add a total of all of the students. Right. So if we wanted to add all of the students' heights put together, we could use that as a total. So what I would have to do is create a new variable and call it total and make it equal to 0 because nothing's been added yet. And then underneath here, before we even go into well, it doesn't have to be underneath here, but it makes the most logical sense. We could also put it at the bottom as long as it was out of the if statement, so it wasn't included in the if or the else, it wouldn't really matter. And then we can say the total is equal to the total and then plus whatever the height is. So you can see we've added a total and it works almost exactly the same as the count because we've added a variable called total, it's equal to 0, and we're saying it's equal to whatever the total currently is plus whatever the height that is input. So once the first loop takes place and the height is put into the total, that is when it starts to total up, okay, and it will keep adding to it after then. So let's run that and see what happens. So if I'll just close that and then we can run it again so you can see it properly. All right, so if we have, let's say, 1.2, 1.4, there, 1.9, 1.8 and 1.6, you'll see, yeah, oh, and you know what I haven't done, which I completely forgot to do, put the print in. Print the total of all heights is, and then comma, and then put total. Right, let's run that again. Run and save, and then we'll just do 1.2, 1.2, 1.2, let's do sum over 1.9 and 1.7. Okay, so you can see we've got the ones that are taller are the 1.9 and the 1.7. The ones that are shorter are the 1.2, the 1.2, the 1.2, and then the total of them all added up is 7.2. Okay, I probably should have put meters on the end there, but you get the idea of what we're looking for here.